welcome to yet another episode of Coffee with Sales Engineers. As you heard me last time, this year I'm taking a slight shift into trying to bring not just sales engineers, but people, companies, leaders that are actually investing in building technology, innovation, and making sales engineers' jobs better and supporting the sales engineering community in general. And today I'm super excited to introduce you all to Neil Parekh from SiftHub. Neil, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thank you, Sachin. Thank you for having me. Really looking forward to being here.
Awesome. I saw you present at the Pavilion presentation, and I've been watching you guys on LinkedIn. I always say, like, the more technologies that come into the sales engineering ecosystem, you guys are only validating how true our profession is. I've been doing sales engineering long enough where many CROs and VP of sales have told me it's like, oh, try to use the sales technologies that we have. See if you can customize it, or maybe create a custom object in Salesforce to make it look like sales engineering, maybe do Gong differently so it's more focused for sales engineering. But love that you guys are bringing AI innovation, purpose built for sales engineering. So this only validates our profession. Talking about that, Neil, give us a quick intro about yourself, about the company. Let our audience understand more about SiftHub.
Oh, absolutely. And I think, okay, I'll start with a quick intro. In fact, my name's Neil, lead the revenue function here at SiftHub. And I think you outlined a great point, Sachin, in terms of how so many other functions were being focused on while building technology. You had marketing technology, obviously, technology for developers, been around for ages, sales tech. But I see so many other tools coming up as well now that really focus on validating what sales engineers are doing, realizing their potential and also building in that space. So I think this is a space that's up and coming. We're really excited to be building in this space, and I see a lot of potential. A high level of what SiftHub does is we're an AI sales engineer, or think of it as an AI teammate that aggregates information from your dispersed or fragmented tech stack. Typically, you will have tribal knowledge spread across so many different tools, so many different ecosystems within your company. We're able to plug in information from all of these fragmented tools and think of it as a central repository, so to speak. And how I really envisage sales engineers using this is saving so much time and helping them do work that moves them up the value chain, right? You're leaving the grunt work to AI
Nice.
and doing really, essentially, like I said, doing work that makes you move up the value chain. I can think of so many examples, multi-threading, things like running multiple POCs with different folks and a few other examples. But yeah, I think that's how
Actually,
I
I'll tell you a quick analogy. See if it aligns with you. This is something
Yeah.
I was at an SE dinner and I talked about it. So I love when you're talking about moving up the value chain. So I was describing to a group of SEs on how SEs could be regarded the same way as surgeons, not saving lives, right? But making a difference, right? Saving deals, right? But the reason I thought of that analogy was because when you observe what happens in an operating room, right? By the time the surgeon shows up, right, there's a team of people that have very specific tasks, but all of those tasks are working in synergy to make sure that by the time the surgeon comes in, everything is ready for him or her to perform their operation, right? Once the surgery is done, which is problem is solved, they are then, surgeon leaves and the team comes back and puts everything else together. Now, the reason I say that SEs could be the next surgeons is because every SE that you talk to, it's the grunt work that they don't like, right? It's the demo prep, it's the RFP response, it's the 15 questions that many AEs are asking that I know that they can just go search somewhere else instead of bugging me about it, right? It's the post demo follow up, right? There's all these things that people have to do, but no company can really afford to have 5 junior SEs working with each SE, right? The cost model just doesn't work. But technology can solve for that, right? So I've been kind of using this analogy to say, look, as an SC, I feel more empowered, even like if I'm a senior solution architect, right? I should not have to do grunt work. Where I truly add value for that company is I have the deep understanding of what our platform does. I can build trust and relationship with the audience, with the prospective buyer, and I can solve the solution. Even though our product doesn't solve it, I can solve around it for our buyer, right? So if SEs can do that all the time, man, you'll make their job much, much more comfortable, exciting, empowering. So, is that what SiftHub is trying to help us?
Exactly. I think you've hit the nail on the head, making it more exciting, empowering, rewarding. And I think the rewards also flow back obviously to the firm. It's how do you not make them waste time doing all this grunt work that you just mentioned,
Yeah.
right? Let's free up time so they can do exactly the things we've been talking about in terms of figuring out workarounds for potential solutions. Maybe my product cannot solve this today, but an SE, a technical resource, is going to figure out a workaround, right? Like I said, multi-threading is a great example. I think I like to refer to this as build mode, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to free up times, and I saw this I follow Rue Dickinson on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh,
Great guy.
you know,
Yeah.
great guy, yeah. Love his content. So I think he put this very well. And the idea was a lot of times SEs block their calendars or just have random blocks. And as an A back in the day, I would always just involve them in any call last minute.
Right.
But I would not, or I couldn't understand that or what these SEs are doing in those blocks. I don't understand the strategic work that goes
Yeah.
in terms of building out these solutions, solutionizing what these specific pain points prospects have, and obviously all the other more strategic work that
Yeah.
is higher up the value chain than doing all the grunt work.
Yeah. That's interesting. One of the when you mentioned that, one of in my book I have this one chapter that talks about 7 AE sins and 7 SE sins. One of the 7 AE sins is inviting your SC just in case a technical question comes up, or inviting the SC last minute. SCs hate that.
I
But no,
know, right?
that's really interesting. And Neil, let me ask you. When I hear about, there's a lot of talk and conversation about AI as sales engineer. And I wanted to clarify for the audience and the way you guys are pitching it, because, one of the professions, obviously many jobs are being impacted, rightly so, right? Because of automation, because of AI agents. One thing I preach and I talk to a lot of SCs in the community about is we don't have to worry about our role, right? Because our role is as human as it gets, in the sense that when we're talking to prospects, our role is foundationally based on trust, right? It's human to human trust. We're not trainers, right? We're not pushing the buttons. The value we're adding is the ability to understand the problem and come up with a solution, right? When SCs worry about AI agents or AI SCs, I think there's a fear that there's a future where sales reps or go to market teams would not need SCs. AI agents can do demos, can answer questions for prospects. I don't think that's what you're referring to when you say AI agent, because so tell me a little bit about that. What's your vision for that?
Yeah, no, and I think great point. I've got this objection or question, I would say, a few times. But how I like to put it is SEs are not going anywhere, right? There's no AI agent that can do what an SE can do, especially for, I think, folks in sales and solutions. Like you said, I think the biggest aspect of their jobs is that human to human connection, which AI can never replace. So SEs, in my opinion, SEs are not going anywhere. We're here to augment your workflows in terms of helping you get rid of all this grunt work. And I think like we've been talking about, for example, RFP responses,
Mm-hmm.
demo prep, post demo follow up, so on and so forth, diverting a few, or let's say, queries from AEs to, let's say, an AI bot that can help them instead of you getting bombarded with questions 24/7 by more non-technical folks. So the idea here is to free up time,
Yeah.
not to, and I don't think it's possible to replace SEs like I've been saying. It's more to augment what you're doing. And obviously, with the time that SEs will be able to free up, I feel like they'll become 10x more productive, move up the value chain, do all the stuff we've been talking about in terms of spending more time in that build mode. And I think just become much more integrated in that sales process.
Good. I think that thanks for clarifying that, right? Because when you look across, if you're a BDR, right, there are companies literally removing their BDR team and replacing it with AI agents. If you are customer support, even, right, the whole concept of agent force is about how can customers get the same level of insights and questions and inquiries that they had to talk to humans. So
Yeah,
if I'm understanding you correctly, your version of AI SE is really those assistants that I was talking about, right? Like the assistants that
exactly.
SCs don't have today, right? And probably can't afford, but SiftHub is providing you with those assistants at a reasonable cost and all that. So good. Glad we
Of course.
clarified
And I
that.
think, excuse me, just another point as well is it's also if obviously it's going to assist SEs, but think of all the time it's going to free up by AEs not pinging questions to you, as an
Yes.
example. There's other functions that are reliant in terms of time saving that will propel to SEs, right?
Right.
So it's
Totally.
not only about us assisting SEs, but other functions that will then free up time for SEs as well.
Totally. And, and
Yeah,
I've always talked about in my book and otherwise, right, is the role, the influence and impact of sales engineering should not be limited to sales. If SCs had more time, they should be going and spending one-on-one time with product managers, right? Talking about product roadmap, talking
exactly.
about the trends that they're seeing in the sales cycles. If they have time, they should be spending time with their product marketing to give feedback on what message is resonating or not resonating or why not resonating. They should be spending time with services leadership team to better understand how the products that they've envisioned, how are they going through in the implementation? What are some challenges or obstructions or frictions they're running into so they can incorporate some of that back into the sales cycle, right? All of this is common sense, but usually SEs don't end up doing it because they're busy working the deals, right? So if
Exactly.
you can
I love
free
it,
that
right?
up, that would definitely help the whole company.
Exactly. And I think you hit a great point in terms of how SEs are really the central piece. SEs are connected with obviously your prospects or front customer facing roles. Like you said, product marketing, product, as well as engineering. So there's almost a link between a lot of these different functions, individual functions that don't have insights into each other's roles.
Yeah.
And I think
There's so many
yeah,
times I have been in companies where the product leadership asks the AEs on what should we do for our product roadmap, like which feature we should prioritize. Now you're in sales, I've been in sales. Guess what my answer would be? Is the biggest opportunity I have in the pipeline, right? I want you to fix what would help me close that deal. And that's what my and yours position should be because we are focused on bringing business to our companies, right? But that's not what the
absolutely.
company wants, right? The SC is going to provide a more broader, more longer term feedback than what's needed in quarters. So, all right, Neil, you've never been an SE from at least from what I could see from LinkedIn,
Yeah,
but
yeah. No, I haven't.
here you are selling to SEs and sales engineering leaders all day long. Tell me about that experience. Tell me about what's exciting to you about being at SiftHub.
Yeah, no, great question. I have not been an SE, but I have worked very closely with SEs before. And a lot of, when I was obviously considering moving to SiftHub, a lot of these problems really resonated with me. I used to not, or I didn't have a sense of how valuable an SE's time is in terms of doing all of these different
Yeah.
things, juggling so many different tasks. But slowly and slowly, while selling tech for the last 8 to 9 years, I've realized that working with SEs very closely, like I would, in my initial days, very often I would add SEs to last minute calls. I know they hit that, no context.
Yeah.
One example, RFP, I would expect unrealistic that timelines in terms of them helping me submit RFPs. So many different things culminated into my understanding of what this SE role actually entails.
Yeah.
So I feel like I understand or I resonate in all my time working with so many SEs. Been lucky that I've worked with great SEs, but I think I've really understood, I've had the opportunity to understand what these folks go through and how a specific set of technology can alleviate a lot of their issues in terms of freeing up time, do the grunt work for them. And I think if I allude back to my previous example, right, they wouldn't have to book time on their calendar or slot these
Right.
times. They would just have time to do a lot of this strategic and high value work. But I think my main motivation is the fact that I resonate a lot with these problems, having worked very closely with them for the past 8 or 9 years.
And you've been on the other side, right? Too. So you've seen how your SCs contributed value to you. If you think about your favorite SC, if you only had 50% more of their time, right? Your individual performance would have been directly impacted by that, right? Like that's what at least I hear when
100%.
I talk to enterprise account executives and they were like, if I could get in front of more opportunities, if I had more of my SC time, but they all respectfully manage their SC's time. They don't want to overburden them because you also see the opposite effect of that. When SCs get stretched thin, the quality of the personalization, the prep that they can bring to each opportunity gets impacted, right? So it's good that you've experienced it on both sides.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think I have so many opportunities I can recount where I would have preferred to have maybe another SE, and I know for a fact that that's the difference between, let's say, a 100K or a 500K ARR deal, right?
Yeah.
Hypothetically, or that's the difference between a closed one and a closed lost opportunity.
Right.
So there's always a scramble for the best SEs. How do we make their time more accessible?
Yeah. Good. Now, you guys run across all kinds of AE teams, SE teams. I think you've got a good vantage point, right? You're pitching to SE teams and revenue teams. Any trends you're observing in, how companies are investing in AE versus SE resources, or how the AE SE relationship is changing? I'm curious if there is a perspective that you guys can bring to our audience.
Yeah, so I think as a trend, what I'm seeing is lines are being blurred between your traditional A's, SEs, as well as I would say customer success reps, post-sale. I'm
Mm-hmm.
seeing a lot of the delineation that existed in the past. Typically, A's used to sell, SEs would validate, yes, reps would retain. But with the advent of AI, I think that these lines are getting blurred. I expect AEs to get much more technical now.
Yes.
I expect SEs to start owning quota directly, which I've seen in a few companies as a trend, but I'm seeing this pick up, right? SEs are actually going to start owning revenue, which I think is a great thing. And I think at Agent Force, that's already happened.
Yeah.
SEs are now owning revenue. And yeah, and I think that's the trend that I expect to see. AEs definitely getting much more technical with all the information that's accessible to them, and SEs owning revenue. So that's one thing. In terms of tooling, I think like we've been talking about, right? You're seeing the trend right in front of you. There's a lot of companies now building specifically for SEs.
Mm-hmm.
Before it was mostly, and I think like you mentioned before as well, it would be some sort of hacky way of using a sales tool, would be
Yeah.
some hacky way of using, let's say, a Gong, etc.,
Yeah.
for SE use cases or for SE purposes. But now folks are building specifically for SEs, so I think that's a great validation of the value that SEs bring.
Yeah.
And it's not just a few tools, right? I'm seeing so many different tools building for different SE use cases. So I expect that to be a big theme in terms of SE tech adoption. I'm seeing a lot of investment in folks or in companies investing in these specific tools, realizing that SEs need help. SEs need this technology to be more productive and reduce or cut down time they spend doing all the grunt work. So yeah, I think that's what I'm seeing at a high level.
And it makes sense, right? It's an expensive resource, right? And I think I've been in SC long enough that we have thank God finally gone over the hurdle of where SC leaders had to fight really hard, right, for getting additional SCs, right? And now I feel we are over that hurdle where if I'm an SC leader and I've got a good, strong sales engineering team, it's not that much of a battle to talk to my revenue leader about why I need to add more SCs. If we're going to grow our sales team, we're going to grow our SC team, right? Once you have
Exactly.
the ratio right. But I think there's still this challenge around, well, I've got the SC team. I want that SC team to be more efficient. What are some ways I can get them to be more efficient? How can we get more ROI from every dollar that we're investing in SC resources? I think that's the problem that companies are continuing to struggle with. And the technology, the innovation helps, and AI helps in scaling SC teams better.
Exactly.
Do you have thoughts on? I'm sure you're talking to a lot of SC leaders, CROs, revenue leaders. Do you have thoughts on how this profession is going to change over the next couple of years? Everybody's kind of watching to see what's going to happen. What's your prediction?
Yeah. No, I think one is a couple of things, right? That I've some common themes from the folks I've been speaking to. One is with the advent of AI, a lot of this grunt work is going to go away. So I foresee SEs becoming much, much more productive, being involved in the sales cycles much earlier, right? I think that's a
Mm-hmm.
theme that today between AEs and SEs. I think that the relationship is super important, but a lot of the times AEs don't involve SEs early enough in the sales cycle. Could be because of a bandwidth crunch, could be because obviously SEs are preoccupied with so many different things.
Yeah.
And I've noticed sometimes that AEs also don't realize how valuable SEs can be in terms of bringing their technical perspective to the table.
Yeah.
Sometimes they just think of SEs also as more technical support, but I feel like SEs have a lot more to contribute than that. So I feel like AI will free up time for a lot of these things. SEs are going to become much more involved in the sales cycles. early on by freeing up all this grunt work. And I think with the advent of AI, you're going to have much the ability for SEs to make much or conduct much better demos, more personalized demos with all the plethora of information that they have access to. So I think it's going to be these two things. I don't see much else, like I said before as well, for most customer facing functions, I don't see much else changing, at least in the next couple of years, purely
Mm-hmm.
because that human to human interaction is what is going to be key. Your relationships are going to be key. Everyone I've spoken to, no one wants to speak to a bot.
Yeah.
I think some SEs are apprehensive of the fact that, hey, listen, maybe a bot can do a demo. There's a few tools that can do that now,
Yeah.
but I just don't see that happening, right?
Research has been done on
Yeah,
this. Like all of us, when we call some 800 number, right? And the moment it starts to go through, like the press one, I don't know if they've done research on how many people press zero to just talk to somebody, right? That would be an interesting fact, but I totally
that would
agree
be
with you,
interesting.
right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
just some high level trends I see. Definitely, I think the overarching theme is SEs are going to become much more strategic.
Yeah.
Folks are already realizing how much, how valuable SEs are with their technical perspective, with their ability to solution. Yeah, I recently was speaking to, in fact, mentioned that SEs in their team do a very different discovery to AEs in their team.
Yes.
And that stood out to me, right? Like I can relate to the fact that I maybe don't have the technical perspective that this SE has, and he or she just has so much more value to add during every interaction with the prospect or a customer.
Yeah. I think the vantage point that SCs have, right, compared to the AEs, one SC is always supporting multiple AEs, right? So just by that, they're listening to 3 or 5x times the number of prospects than the AE
Well,
is asking, right? And two, to really solution for a prospect's needs, you really need to understand the platform at a deeper level, which AEs don't really need to. So even though AEs will become more technical, I don't think they necessarily need to become as technical as SEs because their role is never going to be, hey, can you actually show us exactly how this can be done? Not just that, this is a bullet point in a marketing deck, right? But I like
agreed.
what you were saying around it's not just about saving SC time, it's about improving the SC visibility and SC impact in longer parts of the sales cycle because I see this telephone game a lot where even though a BDR is doing a discovery or the AE is just doing a discovery, they can do a very excellent job of listening and writing, but still some information is lost compared to if that SC was on that call. And to your point, it's not just being a bystander and just listening to the discovery, but being able to ask questions. Just like AE and SC play this dance in front of in a demo, right? It's not usually here's my pet peeve in front of an audience. The SC is talking and the AE is checking their Slack. When the AE is doing the presentation, the SC is like checking their Slack. Both
Yeah.
are bad scenarios, right? You both need to be listening to understanding, even if it's a remote meeting, to understanding what the vibe of the meeting is, who's talking, who's asking what question, why are they asking this question right now. The same can be applied to discovery, right? Discovery is such an important stage in a sales cycle where the prospect is sharing, right, about their business. And if the SC is asking the right questions that they know that 3 months, a month, 2 weeks down the road when they're doing the demo, they can actually incorporate this really good insight to make that presentation more personable, right? I think in AE's defense, where I've experienced that whole desire of let's get SCs involved earlier on fails is when in a discovery SCs start to go too deep, right? And you
Hmm.
start asking
Yeah.
all these technical questions, and it's the buyer may not be in the right mindset just yet, right? They're
Yeah.
not ready to. They're just talking to you to see if they want to keep talking to you, right? They're not even evaluating your solution yet. So I think it's a balance, but this is another one of those things where SCs have never traditionally been trained to do better discovery. I mean, there are books on there by Peter Cohen that talks about that. But I think as that role evolves, this might be a new set of skill set, a new muscle that SCs can build on how SCs and AEs should do discovery together. The same way everybody knows how AEs and SCs should do demo together.
Yeah. No, great points. And I think to the previous point you mentioned, Just to clarify, in terms of AEs expected to get to a certain technicality or a technical level, I'm seeing, I mean, and I'm sure this is a very common trend, right? Like these days, buyers are doing so much research before they speak
Yeah.
to you for the first time. So they don't want to be talking to anyone who doesn't know their product very well,
Right.
right? I don't expect them to be as technical as SEs. That's not going to happen. But I expect to be talking to someone who knows about their product
Yeah.
very, very well.
Yeah.
So,
No,
yeah.
good. All good trends, man. There, it's if anything else, I think the existence of platforms like SiftHub and others, like I said, are validating, are helping us grow, and I love that your whole theme is around how can SEs move up the value chain, which every SE I talk to, that's what empowers them. They're not in this role because of commissions, because of winning deals. All of that is part of right why they are excited about it. But what really motivates them is problem solving and bringing the right solutions to their prospects. And you guys are helping them do that. So thank you for being on the podcast. For anybody listening in, if you want to learn more about SiftHub, go to their website. If you don't mind, Neil, reach out to Neil Parekh on LinkedIn. And great to have you on the podcast. And thank you for sharing your insights.
Of course. Thank you for having me, Sachin. Really nice talking to you.